Hello and welcome to the Rank and Report football show from Richmond, Virginia to London, England. I am your host, Adam Booker, and I'm joined, as I always am, by Mr. Charlie Gordon. How you doing, Charlie?
I'm fantastic, Adam. I'm here in my dressing gown because there's no rules on the Rank and Report football show. And we're back this week doing what we do best, which is ranking, basically providing power rankings for the 10 best teams in Europe recently. It's been a little while, been a good 3 weeks because of the international break. But if you haven't seen our last video, which was last week, we did an European under 20s 11. That's done pretty well. I feel like people enjoyed that one. So click on that one. Go and give that one a watch if you haven't already.
Yeah,
Adam,
you
how are
can
you
hit the.
doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, just happy to be back, like you said. But yeah, if you're interested in that under 21 video, you can hit the card in the top right corner right now, and you can go watch that. It's at least for another 12 months or so is kind of a timeless video. So yeah, I'm just happy to be back with the rankings, and I just want to mention right now, at time of recording, all of the Champions League games for this week have not been played, so our rankings will not take in account the results that are happening today and yesterday. So don't be upset if you feel like your team isn't high enough because they had a big midweek win. That will be on the next. That will be considered for the next rankings episode, but yeah, happy to be back. Happy to give some more rankings. And why don't we just hop right into it, Charlie, if you're
Tell
ready?
them, yeah, do some reporting. Tell the crowd what's been going on for the last couple of weeks.
All right, I am gonna hop straight in with my 10 through 6. In at number 10, as usual, I've used my number 10 spot as my kind of we'll call it my hipster spot. Teams that are not in maybe not in one of the bigger leagues or kind of lesser known leagues, then I think it's a little fun to just kind of throw a hipster pick in there. So I've got Sporting Lisbon in at number 10, who right now are sitting first in the Portuguese league, 4 points clear of Braga in second. They're led by their goal scorer Pedro Gonçalves. He's already got 9 goals this season. Um, Only conceded 5 goals in the league already so far. Their recent results were a 2-1 win versus Moreirense, I believe is how you pronounce it, a 7-1 thrashing of Saccavenense, and a 4-0 win over Vitoria. They're basically just dominating everybody in Portugal right now. And it's funny, if you Google Sporting Lisbon and you click on the little news tab, basically their entire attacking force is linked to big clubs, Premier League clubs, La Liga clubs. And I bet kind of feels like maybe a Monaco or a Borussia Dortmund, where soon they're going to be selling off all these kids, and you'll see a lot of these sporting players in and around the big clubs in Europe. So one to look out for. But yeah, I've got them in at number 10. Hopefully they can stay in and around my rankings for the rest of the season. All right, in at number 9, this may be a bit of a surprise. I've dropped Borussia Dortmund all the way from last week's ranking of number 5 to number 9. I was just really upset with their 2-1 loss versus Cologne at home last weekend. I said it when we talked about them last time on the pod that every once in a while they will lose to a team that they should not lose to. Cologne were winless since March, and they came in to the Westfalenstadion and they beat Borussia Dortmund. And that's why they've dropped down to 9 for me. But they also had a 3-0 win in the Champions League against Bruges and a big 5-2 win at Hertha Berlin. But honestly, if they hadn't had those big wins in the Champions League and in Berlin, they might have fallen out for me because I was that upset about the home loss to
Wow.
Cologne.
Yeah, Adam.
Um,
I saw you getting quite upset about that one on Twitter, but it's the first time that the Rank and Report football show has got a prediction right. You said that Dortmund have that kind of thing in their locker, just losing to a completely rogue team like that, and for once we were proved right. So silver linings, really.
yeah, exactly. I think Cologne were winless in 18 straight Bundesliga games. It was just not the time to lose. But yeah, so I've got Borussia Dortmund in at number 9. Moving on to number 8, I've got Chelsea. Last week I had them ranked at number 10. Their recent results are a 0-0 draw versus Tottenham, one of the worst matches of football I've watched in a long time from entertainment standpoint. It was a bit of a there was some tactical entertainment, but as far as goal scoring and really anything fun to watch, it was quite a bore. But they also beat Rennes 2-1 in the Champions League and a 2-0 win over Newcastle 2 weeks ago in the league. I said last week on the pod, they're kind of starting to gel with these new signings and getting everybody on the field finally after some early season injuries. I felt like Frank Lampard set them up really well against Tottenham. You know, Heung-min Son and Harry Kane have been lethal so far this season. No one's really been able to stop them, and they were pretty much kept quiet the entire game at Stamford Bridge. So I uh, I was pretty happy with the way Frank set them up. They've only conceded one goal in their last four league games, and this is a team that doesn't really have trouble scoring goals, but in the last couple seasons, especially in Frank Lampard's first season, they've had a lot of trouble keeping balls out of their net. But so far, they've done it pretty well this season. The sign of Thiago Silva has definitely helped that. So I've got Chelsea in at number 8. Moving on to number 7, I've got Chelsea's opponents at the weekend, Tottenham. Like I said, the recent result was a 0-0 draw versus Chelsea, a 4-0 win versus Ludogorets in the Europa League, and a big 2-0 win over Pep Guardiola's Manchester City at home. Look, they sit top of the Premier League right now, and it feels like a classic Mourinho team. They're very compact, and when they need to break, they break at pace with power, and they are really electric, and they put the ball in the back of the net most of the time when they break. That combo, like I said, of Kane and Son has really just been a revelation. This new role of Harry Kane kind of dropping back and being a facilitator of the ball. He's been done so well in that position. So right now Tottenham are flying, and that's why they've gone from unranked to up to 7th. And then in at number 6, I've got the mighty Ajax, who were previously ranked number 7, so they've moved up one slot. The recent results were a 5-0 win versus FC Emmen, a 3-1 win versus Michelin, and a 5-0 win versus Heracles, I believe is how you pronounce it. It's simple with Ajax. They're always dominating the Dutch league, but they've got to be in that top 10 because they do have good performances in the Champions League as well. They're tied for second in their group, and that's a tough group with Atalanta and Liverpool. They've scored 42 league goals and only conceded 5. That is an unbelievable goal difference. And Lassina Traore and Dusan Tadic playing up top, they each have 7 goals, and they're really unstoppable. And like I said, the mixture of good performances in Europe as well as their domestic dominance is why I have them ranked so high. If they weren't doing well in Europe, then just dominating a league that isn't the toughest wouldn't get you in my rankings, but I do have them in at number 6. What do you think, Charlie?
I've got no major issues with that. I think Sporting Lisbon probably, if people haven't been keeping up with some of the far-flung leagues in Europe, that might surprise a few people, but I thought of them as well. They're battering the Portuguese league. So I definitely did think about them. It's just the fact they've got no Europe to contend with this season, so it's a little bit more tricky to kind of evaluate where they are. But yeah, other than that, we've got a few repeat teams. No, not too many spoilers, but yeah, no major issues with that really.
I think the reason that I did consider the fact that they have no European competition right now, but if you look at the teams that they compete with for the title there, like Benfica and Porto, who are doing all right in Europe at the moment, to be 4 points clear of second place, and I think they're 8 points clear of Porto at the moment. That's kind of why I had them sneak in.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to argue with you at all. And if they can keep this up for the whole season, you're definitely right. It could be one of those where some of their players kind of burst onto the scene and they get big moves, and God knows what can happen. But yeah, so I'm going to rattle through my 10 to 6 now. Probably a bit more of a fast pace because we've got some repeats in there. I'm not going to repeat what Adam said, only if I can add something new to the conversation. So number 10, someone I don't believe Adam's got in his 11, and that is Inter Milan. Antonio Conte's Inter Milan. They are second in Serie A right now, and they are coming off their two most recent league results, which is a 4-2 win at home to Torino and a very, very good 3-0 win away at Sassuolo, who I think are third in Serie A at the moment. So that is an excellent win for them. The only dampener on things, which I believe is probably why Adam doesn't have them in here, is they lost, I think it was 2-0 to Real Madrid at home in the Champions League. Adam, can you confirm that scoreline?
Yeah, it's basically just their overall European form is why I don't have them in.
Yeah, their European form's been really poor. They've been scrapping it out in quite a tough Champions League group along with Real Madrid and Mönchengladbach. But I think they're deservedly in there at the moment. Lukaku is still absolutely on fire. Like I said, 2 recent very, very good league results, and they're second in an extremely competitive Serie A. So Inter deservedly clinging on to number 10 there. But I did, I'm with Adam. I like to make number 10 my hipster spot as well. But unfortunately, I had to put Inter there on merit this week. Number 9, I've got big Frank Lampard's Chelsea, who are third in the Premier League. Like Adam said, 2-0 win away at Newcastle, 0-0 at home to Tottenham. Look, here's what I'm going to say. I don't really agree that it was the most boring game, actually. I found it kind of entertaining. I thought Chelsea put up a reasonable fight, but they did basically what City did, which was to set up camp in the Spurs half. And shock horror, they couldn't break them down. And then I'm going to get onto the Spurs element, when I get to Spurs. But basically, they put up a better fight against Spurs than City did. They managed to come away with a point. City got beaten 2-0. And Chelsea are just a side that are picking up pace at the moment, and they've got plenty left to come because Werner is just hitting his groove, and he's got tons of goals in him. And also, they've not found a proper place in the starting 11 for Kai Havertz. And I'm not saying that's imminent, but when that does happen, it's a different kettle of fish altogether because, Chelsea are an entirely different proposition when you've got a European star like that coming into the 11. So Chelsea are 9th at the moment, based on all of the above. Number 8, I've got Adam's favourites, Real Sociedad. He's probably going to gasp because I've got them so far down the list. And they are still first in La Liga, but there is another team that is absolutely breathing down their necks at the moment, who I'll get onto later. Sociedad, recent results, a 1-0 away win at Cadiz, and then a 1-1 draw at home to Villarreal. So I think that, and also in Europe, they drew away at AZ Alkmaar. So basically, those 3 most recent results put together, potentially showing the first signs of slowing down the freight train that is Sociedad this season. But obviously, they didn't lose any of those 3 games, so that I might be a bit premature in saying that. They're still top of La Liga, still in really good form, still a force to be reckoned with, so they're in at number 8. Number 7, me and Adam in perfect agreement here. I've got Tottenham Hotspur, Jose Mourinho's team. Now I can talk about the Chelsea game, because I think the main takeaway from that game, I had a bit of a revelation in that game because I've not been a Mourinho fan in any sense, in the personal sense, in the managerial sense, for a long time. I thought he was finished, basically. But I have to say, Spurs played similar tactics to what they did against Man City, which was soak up the pressure, spring a counter-attack where they're so deadly. And I have to say, when they got on the ball, they were unbelievable to watch. I was impressed with so many players, and Ndombele's really found his feet there, playing centre attacking mid. I was just unbelievably impressed. It wasn't just like Tottenham weren't in the game at all, and then when they got a counter-attack, they'd fling bodies up and hope for the best. They were playing absolutely fantastic football against Chelsea. But in the end, it finished 0-0 at Stamford Bridge, so good result for Spurs. Number 6, my favourites, Ajax. Like Adam said, 5-0, 5-0. Their 2 most recent league results. It's becoming a joke now. They should probably just apply to play in a different league because it's not even competitive at this point. 42 goals in 10 games, 4.2 goals a game. I mean, if it carries on at this rate, they're going to be breaking all kinds of records. Lassina Traore, the 19-year-old, is up there on 7 goals. Dusan Tadic, who we all know about, has joined him. And Davy Klaassen, the centre mid, has chipped in with 5 himself. I know we weren't mentioning the Champions League, but I did watch a bit of their game against Liverpool last night, and that just hammers home why they're in this 10, because I'm not going to lie, they really held their own at Anfield. They looked extremely dangerous, and if they could just work on their finishing a little bit, there's young players in that side, so you can forgive them, but they really could have got something from that game, if not a win. So Ajax deservedly up there in 6, despite the kind of poor nature of their domestic league.
I can't say I'm too unhappy with that 10 through 6. I've got a bit of a bone to pick with Inter, but I think we're going to talk a bit more about Serie A later in the show, so I'll save it for that. But yeah, I mean we're not too far off from each other. 7 and 6 are identical.
We're in
Like you said,
perfect harmony.
I'm I'm not too happy about Sociedad. My boys from Spain being thrown in there at what, number 8.
Yeah,
So
your boys.
I'll get on to them later because
Listen,
they're a special team in my heart.
this is the beauty of the Rank and Report football show. You now have a chance to make their case, um, and yeah, I'm sure you'll use your persuasiveness to win me over.
Yeah, right. Before we get into any more debates, I guess I'll just go through my 5 through 1 so I can make some of those cases. All right, in at number 5, I have got Napoli. Previously had them ranked at number 8, but they've had a really good run of results. The recent results were a 4-0 win versus Roma, a 2-0 win versus Rijeka, I believe is pronounced, in the Europa League. And they did have a 3-1 loss versus Milan. Really tough team to beat at the moment who are flying. So, I can kind of brush that one aside as coming up against one of their title rivals in Serie A, and, one loss is not the worst thing. But yeah, like I said, it was a rough day against Milan. The win versus Roma was really, really impressive, and it was without Victor Osimhen at the moment, who got injured on international duty. You had that great moment of Insigne scoring that free kick, who's born and bred in Naples, and goes over and lifts up the Maradona shirt, who obviously is a Napoli legend. So yeah, I kind of think in a weird way, the just emotion and the vibe around the club at the moment, just based on, obviously obvious current events, that there's kind of this miracle feeling around the club now. And I think that 4-0 thrashing of Roma kind of showed it. So anyways, I've got Napoli in at number 5. I'm gonna go into them a bit more later, but yeah, Napoli in at number 5. In at number 4, I've got my boys, Real Sociedad. Like you said, recent results have not been great. 1-0 win versus Cadiz, 0-0 draw versus AZ Alkmaar, and a 1-1 draw versus Valencia. It seems like the goal scoring form has kind of dropped a little bit. They have been without David Silva in the last 2 games, it's worth mentioning, who obviously is kind of the hub of creativity in that midfield. But the defense is still staying sturdy. And if and when the goals start flowing again, they're going to just keep on rolling like that. So I'm not too worried about them. I think it's just a bit of a blip. And with really only one other real competitor in Spain at the moment, I think they'll be just fine without, the usual juggernauts hanging around like Real Madrid and Barcelona. So I think it's just a blip, and they'll carry on. And David Silva getting back into the team will help a lot. So Real Sociedad are in at number 4. In at number 3, I've got the team you mentioned breathing down their neck, Atletico Madrid. I previously had them unranked. I don't know what I was thinking. We can all just forgive me for that right now. Their recent results were a classic 1-0 win versus Barcelona, a 0-0 draw versus Lokomotiv Moscow, and a 1-0 win versus Valencia. Seems like those Simeone 1-0s are back, and that is a recipe for winning a league. It felt like a bit of a weird start to the season, but when you really get down to metrics, they've only conceded 2 league goals so far. They sit in second, but they have 2 games in hand, and if they win those 2 games, then they'll be sitting pretty in first place. And they had a pretty decent result. Like we said, we wouldn't mention really the Champions League, but they had a decent result against Bayern Munich yesterday. So if that result had been thrown in here, maybe they'd been higher than number 3. But I've got Atleti in at number 3. In at number 2, I've got AC Milan. I previously had them ranked number 6 because they had a bit of a blip, but they bounced back. They had that's reverse order, but 2-0 win versus Fiorentina, 1-1 draw versus Lille, who seemed to be their bogey team in the Europa League, and then they had that big 3-1 win versus Napoli. They had no Zlatan in both the Lille and Fiorentina games, but they still did all right, especially against Fiorentina. They caused a lot of problems. They got 2 penalties awarded them in that game, and they weren't soft penalties. They were because those, Brahim Diaz, Samu Castillejo, guys like that were causing a lot of havoc in and around the box. But they're 5 points clear at the top after 9 games, and for a club that has waited nearly a decade now to really get back to the top where they should be, this is a very, very exciting time, I'd say, for AC Milan. So I've got them in at number 2. And then in at number one, no surprise, Bayern Munich. They've been number one, I think, 3 episodes in a row now. Maybe even from the beginning. I can't remember who I had in first at the beginning, but they've been in and around number one the whole time this show has existed. But their recent results were a 1-1 home draw was against Werder Bremen. Not the greatest, but they can shake it off. 3-0 win versus RB Salzburg in the Champions League, and a 3-0 win versus Stuttgart. And I don't know if you saw Charlie Thomas Muller after the game making the windy night in Stoke reference, and he said something like, "I don't know how you British say it, but they say the windy night in Stoke." Well, coming here to Stuttgart is kind of like the German version of it, I guess. So they got a big win in Stuttgart, which is, I guess, a bogey team in Germany. But I think that draw versus Bremen was only a blip, and I expect them to just keep on rolling like they have. There's not much to say that we haven't already said about Bayern. So I've got Bayern in at number one.
Okay, big omission there. Big omission from the top 10. Anyone who's watching, feel free to pause the video and just try and figure out who it is, because there's a big boy that Adam's left out there. And after I've done my 5-1, I'll give him a chance to answer for himself before we go on to the big discussions. But yeah,
I swear it was not bias. It had nothing to do with my emotional feelings towards this team or this city.
Listen, we've proved our non-bias by not having Man City anywhere near the top 10 for the past probably like 6 to 8 weeks now. So yeah, look, I'm going to go straight into my 5-1, and let's see how it goes. Number 5, Borussia Dortmund. Where did you have Dortmund? Number 9. Whoa!
Yeah.
Oh my word! Listen, I had Dortmund at number 2 last week, and for the sake of one defeat against Cologne, which granted, pretty bad defeat. Cologne winless in 18, I think you said, and to lose 2-1 at home, massive shock result. But I'm a huge Dortmund fan. I love their team. The game before that was a 5-2 win away at Hertha Berlin. Haaland scored a hat-trick in 15 minutes. Shock, horror. My favourite guy. Don't know if I've told you that already. Probably have a billion times. Look, Dortmund, they lost that one game, but they're still a force to be reckoned with. They've still got an unbelievable squad. They've dropped down to 4th place in the Bundesliga, but it's really, really competitive this year. Mönchengladbach are doing well. Leverkusen, Leipzig, Bayern. I'd say from the episodes we've done so far, the Bundesliga is looking like the highest quality league this year, which is kind of a shock, because then normally it's the La Liga and the Premier League which are dominating in that respect. But I've still got Dortmund in there at number 5, because that one defeat knocks them down from 2nd to 5th, but I wouldn't be comfortable putting them any lower than that. Anyway, number 4, God, he's left them out, hasn't he? Number 4 is Liverpool. Of course it is. Come on. It's Liverpool. They're in 2nd place in the league, joint top with Tottenham, I believe, on points. And look, Liverpool have been struggling with injuries recently, especially at the back. Trent Alexander-Arnold's been out for a few weeks. So has Virgil van Dijk. Joe Gomez has been out. That means players like Fabinho, Nat Phillips, Nico Williams, who else? Reece Williams. They're the kind of calibre of players that have been filling in for him at the back. Listen, Reece Williams, I think he's 18 or 19. He was playing on loan for Kidderminster Harriers last year. That is my home team. They're in the 6th division of English football. They're awful. And he was playing there last year. So somehow Klopp is working miracles to just make sure they're holding up at the back. They had a really, really good 3-0 win at home to Leicester. The game before last. That's a great win, because Leicester are on fire. They were in this top 10 3 weeks ago. But most recently, a 1-1 draw away at Brighton. A little bit unlucky. They conceded a last-minute penalty for a little bit of a sketchy decision. Anyway, Liverpool, joint top of the league, still a force, still absolutely one of the best teams in Europe, and they've coped with their kind of catastrophe pretty well so far, I think. So Liverpool are 4th. Number 3, we've got an identical... Well, look, we've got the same teams in the top 3, slightly different order. I've gone for Milan at number 3. And I think the major thing you've got to point out about Milan is, like you rightly said, they're top of Serie A by 5 points after something like 9 games. That's crazy because Serie A is very competitive. Like we said, you've got Lazio, Juventus, Inter Milan, some other teams. Napoli. My mind was deserting me there. But 2 recent games, 3-1 win away at Napoli, stunning victory. 2-0 win at home to Fiorentina. Ibra's goal scoring form is just continuing to be absolutely on fire. He's got 10 goals this season, which puts him right up there in the top bracket of Europe strikers, even into his late 30s. Milan are still flying, and they deserve to be up towards the top of the list until this incredible run of form ends. Number 2, the big boys in Spain who are breathing down Sociedad's neck. Second in the league, I think they're 1 point behind. But, and it's a massive but this, they've got 2 games in hand on most teams and they're still second. They have got 2 games in hand on Real Sociedad. So if they won those 2 games in hand, they'd be 5 points clear of them. And, the way things have been going so far, it is looking like they'll win those games in hand. 6 wins in a row in the league with a draw at home to Lokomotiv Moscow, kind of sandwiched in between. Obviously, they got a draw against Bayern Munich last night, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, Atletico are absolutely flying in the league. I don't want to repeat what Adam said. The Simeone 1-0s are back. Simple as that, really. They're in fantastic form. And I would go as far to say, in the last 3 weeks, they are the informed team in Europe. So that's why they're so high on mine. Number 1, I'm getting bored. It's Bayern Munich. What are we gonna say about Bayern? Lewandowski, 15 goals already this season, which is crazy. Haaland is the only player that springs to mind that's on more. He's on 16 already, which is absolutely mental. But yeah, the 1-1 draw at home to Werder Bremen a couple of weeks ago, or last weekend, that was the first blip that we've seen from Bayern in a long, long time. So yeah, but I think, on merit, they deserve to be in this top spot because they've been so dominant beforehand, including in the Champions League as well. It's not just Lewandowski. You got the likes of Koeman, Sané, Muller, Gnabry, all chipping in with goals. They're absolutely a force to be reckoned with. And I think it's pretty unanimous in saying that they're the best team in Europe at the moment. So Bayern top the table for, third, fourth consecutive week. And I'm sure that's not a surprise to anyone.
Yeah. I don't have many bones to pick. I will just defend myself on my omission of Liverpool here. It was a bit of a prediction. I could feel things kind of slipping. Obviously, they've had some terrible injuries. Their top 2 center backs go down with season-ending injuries. And yeah, the result of Brighton, like you said, it was unlucky. It was a somewhat soft penalty in stoppage time for Brighton to equalize. But I just kind of feel like this rough patch may not end immediately. They played their 3rd string keeper yesterday in the Champions League. They did get the win, but if that's what's going to continue going forward, it's not sustainable. 3 of their next 5 games are against Wolves, Tottenham, and Ajax. Oh, I'm sorry, they played Ajax yesterday. So, but they do have Wolves and Tottenham coming up in the league. So it feels to me like it could be a really rough patch with all these injuries. So it was kind of a prediction as well as the rough recent results. So I don't know. I felt like I made my initial rankings. I'll be honest. I made my initial rankings and they were in that little English cluster of Tottenham and Chelsea that I had. But I just felt like Tottenham and Chelsea were on more of an upwards trajectory, and I just had to kick Liverpool out. But it had nothing to do with bias.
No, of course. Look, they're not out of the woods yet with injuries. Going several weeks and, potentially more than that in case they're centre-backs, without 3 of their starting back 4, that is a massive task to cope with for, the majority of a season. But they've played much better than I expected them to so far. And so, Adam, would you not make them favourites for the Premier League right now?
No, I wouldn't. Are we going to open up this can of worms?
No, look, I don't want to open up an entire can of worms. I just want you to really concisely answer that question. So
This
if it's not
this
Liverpool, who's ahead of them?
because of this club's nature and their history, it really is hard to say this, but I genuinely think Tottenham Hotspur are favorites at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, it's annoying. It's really annoying because I've got one housemate who lives there, the other side of that wall, who loves Tottenham. He's not even a Tottenham fan. He loves Jose Mourinho. Um, and he's been saying week after week, "Oh, he's back. Mourinho's back." They're going to win the league, and every week I've been saying, "Don't be silly. They're not going to win the league." And I'm sorry, I'm going to close this can of worms back up in a second, but I don't think it'll be Tottenham purely because you can't. I don't think you can stand off teams like that and just pray for a counter attack and then go and win the league. So, just short and sweetly, that's how I'd phrase that. But I think that segues nicely onto our first big discussion, does it?
It does. We can half close this can of worms and keep the
Okay.
Tottenham can of worms open. Yeah.
Look, open it back up. I'm ready. Tip them all over me.
So let's see. Where do we have them ranked? I've got them. We both got them at 7. So they're in and around there. They're maybe on a trajectory towards the top of our rankings if they keep this up. Obviously, they had the big game against Chelsea over the weekend, and it was kind of a stalemate, and it didn't really seem like Jose went there to get anything but a point, and if he could nick 3 points, he would. That's kind of classic Jose. His philosophy is pretty much beat everybody you're supposed to and don't lose to the teams that you're competing with for a title, and that will eventually find you at the top of the table. Um, in maybe the past 3 or 4 years when Jose was at United and his second stint at Chelsea, I would have said this type of mentality and this type of energy around the club is not sustainable. But something to me feels a little bit different here. I was listening to the two Robbies podcasts, Robbie Earl and Robbie Musto, who cover the Premier League here in the US. Um, and they basically did an 11 versus 11 comparison of this Tottenham side to Jose's Inter side, who obviously were very successful. And there's a lot of striking comparisons. They compared Ndombele to Wesley Sneijder and the role that he played in that Inter side. So I don't know. Something feels a bit different with this team. It doesn't feel as toxic as Jose's time at United or second spell at Chelsea. What's the vibe you're getting?
Yeah, I think my overwhelming thought at the start of this season, and it was confirmed to me, or compounded, I should say, when they lost on the opening day of the season and they looked to Everton and they looked extremely uninspiring. And I just thought Tottenham were a tired squad with a tired manager, and things needed to be seriously shaken up to get any results. But here's the thing: Mourinho did shake it up, but in such an under the radar way, no one really noticed it happening. And what I mean by that is you've got the likes of Pierre-Emile Højbjerg coming in, who's their starting, one of their starting double pivot centre mids. You got Reguilon playing at left back, who is exceptional. Everyone knew he was a good signing, but he's turned out to be so, so good so far. You got Tanguy Ndombele, who cost him £60 million a year ago, but didn't get a proper run in the team last season. Now he looks like a completely different player in centre attacking mid. And he's got kind of shades of Paul Pogba about him. His balance, his dribbling is absolutely fantastic. Not got tons of goals in him, but he's looked a really good player for Tottenham. And then you got Eric Dyer as well, who was playing as a centre mid most of the time, but he's been moved back to centre back. And Mourinho's put tons of trust in him as well. So Ndombele and Dyer, they were already there last year, but they're acting like new signings last season. Højbjerg was a totally underwhelming signing, but he's proved to be really important so far. And Reguilon wasn't a headline-grabbing signing. Everyone knew it was going to be good, but he's turned out to be absolutely fantastic so far. So, yeah. Do you know what I'm getting at, Adam?
Yeah, I do. I just I guess I'm confused as to where you see this going wrong, because for me, I get, the opening day loss to Everton was not great, and I shared the same sentiment that it was very uninspiring, no energy whatsoever. But it kind of felt like the end of the Pochettino era was so rotten and at times toxic, with players, vocally saying that they want to leave and all sorts of contract negotiations, and it was just such a toxic club for so long at the end of that era. And you bring in Jose, who the styles of play are polar opposite from Pochettino to Mourinho. Pochettino is this high pressing, high energy, attacking, somewhat close to Klopp's heavy metal football, where it's just this all the time, foot to the floor. And then Mourinho comes in, and it takes a little while for the shift. You're going from such polar opposite styles of play. I think it's going to take a while naturally. And I think we're now finally seeing this team in its final form, what this team can be at its peak under Jose, with, like I said, with Harry Kane being this new facilitator where he's dropping back, and the two wingers, Bergwijn and Son, whether it's, Lamella or Bale to come in, running on, and him being able to spray balls left and right. And so far, no one's been able to stop it, except for Everton, really.
Yeah.
So I just don't see, with this style of play that's kind of just so meticulous and so pragmatic, in this kind of season where results have been so crazy and the defending has been shoddy all around the league, if you have one team that is a defensive stalwart and can stop anybody, it just feels to me like that's the team that's going to just skyrocket.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason why I can see it going wrong, and I don't think they'll carry it all the way to first place in the Premier League at the end of the season, is because, firstly, a short and simple one, if they get any injuries to key players, big problem. Big problem. If Harry Kane goes down injured, let's say tomorrow, right, they're in massive trouble, because he is the absolute heartbeat of their attack at the moment. They're completely reliant on him because he's been absolutely fantastic. So they've got to get pretty lucky with injuries, especially in attack. That's one thing. And then the second thing is the tactics suggest to me. So when you come up against Guardiola's Man City and you sit off, you soak up the pressure, you hope that they can't get through you, and then you spring a counter attack. That suggests to me that they don't fancy going toe to toe with the big team. They don't think they can do that. They don't think they're good enough to really go toe to toe with a big team. But I mean, yeah, go on. You got something to say? Go on.
I don't know. I feel a bit differently about that. I feel like that's Jose saying, you can't beat us. It's not necessarily a concession of anything, really. Let's think, for example, of the 2017-18 season when City won the league with 100 points. And City went to Old Trafford and absolutely annihilated United in every statistic. And there was no indication that Jose Mourinho wanted anything from that game. It feels a bit different to me now, where it feels like Jose is saying, I know that you can't beat us, and we have enough weapons that if you are unable to beat us, at some point we will nick a goal. And I don't look at it like a Burnley trying to nick a win against a big side. It feels like, to me, because Jose does have a lot of talent at his disposal, it's less of a we're not willing to go toe-to-toe and more of a I just know you can't beat us, basically. To me, it feels more of like a power move than it is a concession of any sort of power or strength.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying, but I think when those kind of tactics can become their undoing is perhaps when they come to teams when basically they could just get too used to sitting off and then springing counter-attacks. This is what United did under Solskjaer when he first took over and they were in that brilliant run. They sat off teams and they sprung great counter-attacks and they were lethal when they did that. But what happens when that just becomes your plan A and you come up against, I don't know, a good defensive team like Newcastle who are going to sit off you, and then you've got to slowly break them down. And you're not very well rehearsed in that kind of game plan. Then all of a sudden you could be in trouble. So I do see some similarities between Jose's side and Ollie's side, who were just really dangerous when they counter-attack. And I know that further down the line, that United run came to an end, and they found it really difficult to break down teams who just sat off them, basically. So yeah,
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. To me, it feels like this is the season made for Jose to flourish. I think if this were your average season where there isn't these rampant muscular injuries and players being out with COVID and this crazy schedule, it feels like it's made for a team to kind of stink up the place every week and not risk anything. Just sit in, get your goals when you can get them, don't concede, and after this kind of shit show of a season, we'll just find ourselves on top. Basically, that kind of feels like maybe what the strategy is here. Is everybody else around us is so hectic and chaotic, we're just going to remain average, and we're just going to find ourselves at the top at the end of it.
yeah. I think they've got a reasonable chance, Spurs. I think they'll probably finish third or fourth, but that in itself would be a great achievement. And I think the top of the Premier League is going to be a lot more clustered than it has been in recent years. So even if they finish third or fourth, I think they'll be within 10, 15 points of top spot. And watching Tottenham most weeks, I am quickly becoming a Jose convert because he's basically just proven to me that he has still got it, and it's just that's facts at this point. You can't really dispute that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, why don't we move on from one title race discussion to another? I'd love to talk about some Serie A because we've had a lot of Serie A teams bounce in and out of our rankings this season, and with the unusual poor form of Juventus, it feels like it's wide open in that league for the first time in maybe a decade. So I'd love to get your thoughts on who your favorites are right now to win that title and give me some reasons why, and why maybe you think Juventus might be rearing back into form at some point. I don't know why you might think that, but whatever it is, right now, what do you think is your in order top four finish in Serie A?
It's interesting because you gave me your top four, and mine was almost the exact inverse. I don't want to I don't want to give too many spoilers when Adam comes to make his case, but I think like we were saying, have Tottenham got a good chance to win the league? I tend to err on the side of thinking those who have done it before, those who have got the proven quality, they're the ones that are going to make the big run to the league. I think you could make a great case for Inter Milan. They're second at the moment. Like I was saying in the top 10, great wins away at Sassuolo and at home to Torino. They're both good teams. Conte has league-winning experience with Juve and with Chelsea, and he's got a very clear managerial philosophy, which just is proven to work. Lukaku's on fire. Lautaro Martinez is wanted by pretty much everyone in Europe, and like we said, they're struggling in Europe, in the Champions League, and if they get knocked out of that could just mean more focus on Serie A. So I think they ran Juventus extremely close for the league last year, and they've got a much improved squad. Instead of Ashley Young and Victor Moses at wing back, they've got Ivan Perisic and who's the other one? Hakimi. How am I going to forget about Hakimi? So they've got a much improved squad from last year. So first things first, I think I could make a case for Inter. What do you reckon about Inter?
So I've got Inter finishing around third, maybe second. My reasoning for that is basically the big thing that their Champions League form has told me so far is that in these big games where they need to get something out of it, they've come up short basically every time so far this season. If you go to last season, a lot of the games that they lost that were their undoing were games against AC Milan, Juventus, and teams like this where sure, you can beat everybody you're supposed to beat all season, but if Milan, Juve, Napoli are also doing the same thing, but you're unable to go toe-to-toe with them in these big games, then you're just not going to finish in first. That's really what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, so you don't think they've got the bottle in the big games, and that's going to cost them big?
Yeah, which is surprising because if you look at Antonio Conte's Chelsea, one thing they did so well was go toe-to-toe with the big sides in the Premier League, and they were able to just basically brutalize them and, win 1-0, 2-0. Diego Costa was a battering ram, and he's now got that in Romelu Lukaku. And like you said, the wing backs with so much pace and ability on the ball. It seems like the ingredients are all there, but in the big games, the recipe is just kind of thrown out the window or something. I really don't know what it is, but they
Yeah.
just, like you said, they don't have the bottle.
Yeah, no, they've struggled in the Champions League, but I think that home loss to Madrid last time out, 2-0, they were playing with 10 men from 33 minutes, so I think you can take that with a slight pinch of salt. But firstly, I would make the case for Inter, but I could also make a strong case, and I know you're not going to make a case for them, and that is Juventus. And that might seem like the least unpopular opinion of all time, because Juve have stormed the league every year for the last, I don't know how long. But they have made a slow start to the league this year. But despite that, Adam said about Juventus's poor form, quotation marks, but they're undefeated. They've not lost a game in the league this season. Having said that, they have drawn 5 of them. So that is a big asterisk next to that. But you can never write off Juventus. The thing that's going against them this season is the fact that Pirlo's a new manager. It's a bit of a new look side, so it could take a little bit of time for them players to bed in. However, when you've got Morata, who I've always rated as a player, even though he suffered a bit in the Premier League, he's already got 8 goals this season. Cristiano Ronaldo is continuing to score at a rate of a goal a game into his mid-30s. And yeah, look, the amount of draws that they're getting is a bit concerning. 4 wins, 5 draws, 0 losses. But at least that shows that they are difficult to beat. So I definitely don't think you can write Juventus off at this stage.
Here's my issue with Juventus. I've watched, I believe, every single Juve game this season, full 90 minutes. And the thing that is completely missing, which they had even under Sarri when they won the league, even though they were rotten to watch under Sarri, they won the league. On all those years under Allegri and all the years under Conte, what they had was the ability to remain in every game. And it's a bit like Klopp's Liverpool. You always knew, no matter what the score was, if it was 1-1 going into stoppage time, if they were down 1-0, they always find a way. That is completely gone now. It was 1-1 against Benevento for all of the second half at the weekend, and there was no indication of them finding that second goal. In fact, Benevento were much closer to winning that game than Juve were. If you go back and look at some of the results so far this season, the 1-1 against Verona, I think they were a little bit unlucky. They did pile on the pressure and they created a lot of chances. But the 1-1 against Crotone, and they've got this 3-0 win against Napoli, but that was a game that wasn't played. That's a 3-0 forfeit win because Napoli didn't show up because of COVID. They drew against Roma. They've lost to Barcelona in the Champions League. So it's just that cloak of invincibility, like I always say, is completely gone. And I have yet to see anything, even when Cristiano is there, I've yet to see anything that tells me that missing ingredient of always finding a way is going to come back.
Right. So I'm going to play interviewer now because I've got to fight my corner. I've got to. So you say the cloak of invincibility is gone. However, they haven't been beaten in the league. So would you not say that, being so... Well, hang on. Look, I'm getting mixed up here. I'm getting totally mixed up. But you said that they're struggling to stay in games, but I don't know if you've got the wrong choice of words, but surely if they're not losing games, then they're always in the game. If they're kind of, if they're staying within touching distance of a draw or maybe nicking a win, they are staying in the game, but maybe they're not. Let's say if they go 2-0 down, or then they're not going to scream, we're going to fight back and win this. But do you not think kind of good defensive foundations, even if they're not spectacular at all, and they just stay in touching distance for a draw at least, are they not good foundations to build a team off?
Yes, they are, and maybe that was the wrong choice of words. I'm really only going off of the standard that they have set in the past decade. And I don't know if you watched the game against Benevento at the weekend, but yes, they were quote unquote defensively stout. They didn't lose and they haven't lost, but that first half could have easily been 5-1 Benevento if a couple of balls had, gone an inch to the right or to the left. The foundation is there, yeah, like you said, but the team is just lifeless. I don't see anything. Dybala has been rotten for nearly 8 months now. And when Cristiano Ronaldo's not on the field, there is just no one else that's going to provide the goals and the spark. If it's not Dybala, who else is it going to be? Bernadeschi is still there, even though they desperately want him to leave. Chiesa hasn't been great since coming in. Douglas Costa isn't there anymore. You look at the juggernaut Juventus teams. Juan Cuadrado was always on the wing and providing so much attacking width. He's playing it right back now. So I'm just not totally convinced that they'll, within this season, like we said, Pirlo's a young manager, but I'm not convinced that within this season they will find that spark that, yes, they're in games, but I never feel like they're going to find something within themselves to win them.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you that if Ronaldo's not on the pitch, where's the spark going to come from? Because I look at their starting 11 against Benevento, and their midfield is pretty uninspiring. They've got Aaron Ramsey left mid, Chiesa right mid, Rabiot and Artur in the middle. That's not offering too much, and it's just like a standard 4-4-2 from Pirlo as well, which is kind of surprising. I was expecting him to offer, a little bit more, something a little bit more out there, a little bit more creative. But yeah, I think despite the fact their 11 is looking quite uninspiring, somehow they've not lost a game yet. So I don't think you can write them off. I have to say to everyone listening, Adam's got the upper hand on me because he does, like he said, you've watched every Juve game. So I think your opinion is worth more than mine at the moment. I can just look at the facts on paper, undefeated, and what we know about Juventus in the past 10 years, what we know about Pirlo, Ronaldo, Dybala in the past. That's what I can go off. But if they are going to lose the league, I would make the case for Inter Milan. So if you don't think Juve are going to win the league, who would you make the case for instead?
I think it's going to be Napoli. I think the time has finally come. They have been right there for so long. 2018-19, they finished second. 17-18, they finished second, only 4 points back. 16-17, they finished third, only 5 points back and only 1 place out of second. And all of those, the spine of all of those teams is still there. We're talking about Dries Mertens, Lorenzo Insigne, Kalidou Koulibaly, Peter Zielinski, Fabian Ruiz. And now you add in guys like Politano, Chucky Lozano, and guys like that, Victor Osimhen. This team is kind of an attacking juggernaut all of a sudden. Under Sarri, they obviously had guys like Higuain that provided a ton of goals. But if Osimhen is going to come in and provide those goals, I don't see another team that can provide that amount of attacking talent with the defensive stability of Manolas and Koulibaly back there. It just feels like nobody in this team is kind of indispensable. There's always a replacement. There's just so much depth that I don't think any other team in Serie A has at the moment. And like I said, those 4 or 5 years where they were just right behind those juggernaut Juve teams, that juggernaut is gone. AC Milan is young. If they hit a bad patch of form, I don't think they'll recover, and I think that could come at some point. But this Napoli team feels like the team with the spine and the experience. And now, like I said earlier, I think the death of Maradona is going to kind of bring this weird emotion around the club where it's like, this has to be our time. I don't know if that's a bit too romantic, but no, that's the way that I view this sport. So
it's true. Things like that happen in football. Leicester won the league. I think more than half of them winning the league was them just riding a wave of emotion for every game, because they definitely didn't do it just on talent alone. So I think stuff like that can happen in football. And I think you're right in saying that Napoli do have a lot of squad depth. When you look at their first 11, a lot of quality all over the pitch, and especially in attack. They're a really dangerous prospect in attack. But the thing that kind of puts me off Napoli, it's a curious one really. And it's the fact that they've got Gattuso as manager. If they had a reputable manager in there, I would be a lot more ready to commit to them as my prediction to win the league. And it's weird because last season they had Carlo Ancelotti, who I would have said if they had someone like him in, then I would back them to win the league. But obviously he had a pretty disastrous spell in charge. I think did they finish seventh last year or something like that?
Yeah.
Yes, seventh. That's really poor from a really well respected manager. And then on the contrary, you've got Gattuso, who I believe you can feel free to correct me here, but I think his only previous job was with AC Milan, where he was pretty uninspiring. All of a sudden, he's in at Napoli. They're playing really well, but he's totally unproven as a manager, and that's just what I'm reluctant to choose them based on that. But do you know anything about Gattuso as a manager? What do you think he brings?
So his time at AC Milan, he first of all, it was a very toxic club at the time. They didn't back him. Um, it seems like it's only a short time now he's been in charge of Napoli, but it seems like he's found a home. Um, Obviously, he's got this president, Aurelio De Laurentiis, who was really difficult to work with, and they butt heads a few times on um, like punishing players for whatever breaking team rules and the way that they want to go about punishing players and stuff like that. They butt heads a few times on stuff like that, but it seems like he's really found a home. And for all the reasons I listed before, I think we've said this about so many teams this season, but because the usual juggernauts are not around, it feels like a season made for this Napoli team. If Juve were normally at their normal top form, finishing with 90 plus points, then I wouldn't have Napoli up and around second or third. But if a team in Serie A is going to win the league on 80 to 85 points this season with the attacking talent that they have and the squad depth they have, I don't think Gattuso is so far off from being a good manager that it's going to pull them down to second, third, or fourth.
Yeah, I'm not saying Gattuso's a poor manager by any means. I just think, by and large, he's an unproven manager, and that puts me off a little bit. Saying outright that they're going to win the league, and then of course within all this, you've got AC Milan, who were going really well, like we've been saying, 5 points clear. So they've got to be somewhere in the conversation as well. I don't know, where have you got them?
Can I just say real quick on the Gattuso thing though?
Yeah,
If you look at the rest of Italy, this isn't the Premier League. You don't have the Pep Guardiolas and the Jurgen Klopps at the other clubs to compete with. Look at Juve. They've got a manager who's now managed 12 total senior games in his life.
yeah,
Stefano Pioli is not necessarily some world beater. He didn't come from Real Madrid and winning multiple Champions Leagues or something. You're really only competing against Antonio Conte for
yeah.
kind of who is the best manager in Serie A. So
Yeah, I think with that in mind, sorry, did you have a point to make there? Sorry.
no, go ahead.
So, like, with that in mind, the kind of weird reason that your mind rationalizes with Pirlo and against Gattuso is because even though Pirlo's not even been in a job before Juventus, we know he's a legend and we don't know what he's capable of. We just know he's a genius on the football pitch. With Gattuso, not as technically good of a player, and he's already had a year or two, well, maybe more than that. He's had several years in management, and he failed to prove himself there. So you've got the prospect of what Pirlo we think he's going to be on one hand, and then we've got what we know so far about Gattuso on the other hand. So it's a tricky one to evaluate, really.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, AC Milan. I kind of mentioned it before. So just for transparency, this is kind of how I have my top four shaping up. It's Napoli in first, then AC Milan, then Inter, and then I've kind of got a cluster at fourth of Juve, Atalanta, and Roma, who I think will all just be up and down all season and will be fighting for that final Champions League spot. Also, I had a note in here that I forgot to mention. It is important to remember that both Roma and Napoli have forfeited a game already this season for different reasons, but they have both forfeited a game. So there's 3 points gone right away. So AC Milan are sitting in first. But like I said, they're a young team. They do have some big time veterans like Zlatan. But I just kind of feel like if they do hit a rough patch of results, I feel like they may not have the stones to pull themselves out of it, basically. Um, and their Europa League form, kind of like their rivals across the city in Inter, their Europa League form has shown me that in these crunch time games, they don't really have it. Obviously, they have that 3-1 win against Napoli, but that's really their only top class opponent they've played so far this season. I'm really looking forward to the Milan derbies or coming up against Atalanta or Juve down the line to see what this team is really made of. But yeah, that's basically it. I don't have too much beef with this Milan team. I just think Napoli are just that little bit more geared to win the league than them.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That's why I've actually got AC Milan in fourth, which seems crazy. They're 5 points clear at the moment, but like you said, apart from Napoli, no massive scalps so far this season. So yeah, I just think they've got a lot of young talent, the likes of Theo Hernandez, Donnarumma, Brahim Diaz, Frank Kessié, and Sandro Tonali. That's tons of young talent in there, but they've not won a league before. So it's hard to back them to carry them over the line on that basis. And it's the same with Pioli, an unproven manager. I feel like I'm just repeating myself over and over again here, but the guy who's absolutely carried them so far this season is Ibrahimovic, and it's a long shot, but if he does keep that form up for an entire season, it will be the most incredible season I've ever seen from a player of that age. So, if Ibra's form does start to dip, I think Milan could be in a little bit of trouble. But yeah, they're a team that's not been in a brilliant place in the last few years. Definitely looking better. I think a solid fourth place in a very competitive Serie A this season wouldn't be that terrible at all. And of course, based on events that have happened so far, they could actually end up a lot higher. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, only time will tell. I think just for time's sake, we'll kind of wrap up our Serie A discussion there. Why don't we move on to? I think before we get out of here, we want to do our quick. So I've gone. Oh man, I had the name of our player of the week award.
That's the one.
Because we didn't have a name for it. I was laying in bed last night and I had it and I didn't write it down.
Broke it. Just sold me a dream there.
Something along the lines of player spotlight or something like that.
Okay.
We'll go player spotlight for this week. It seems to be an ever evolving title, but
perfect. Who have you got? Tell us about him.
I've gone for another hipster pick. I think no way you saw this coming. I've got James Ward-Prowse.
Wow. Love that. Yes. That is so rogue. I absolutely love it. You've just gone dramatically up in my estimation. Carry on.
Look, this guy is a guy that has been such a consistently good player at Southampton for so long now. I'm genuinely so curious as to why he hasn't been swooped up by a bigger English club yet. He's so composed on the ball. This season, he's already got 4 goals and 2 assists. That's in 10 Premier League games. And when he steps up to take a free kick, it feels like he's taking a penalty. It's like the chances of this hitting the back of the net are way greater than it not hitting the back of the net. So yeah. I don't want to go too deep into it just because we don't have a lot of time. But yeah, I think James Ward-Prowse is just such an underrated player. I know Saints fans absolutely love him to death, but I feel like at some point in his career, he's got to go up to, he's only 26 right now. He can still go to a big, big club in England, and I think he will at some point. I think he's that good.
Yeah, it's with Southampton, it's got to the point where you can't even give away cheap free kicks anymore because he's that good at whipping in free kicks. It's unbelievable. His dead ball delivery is right up there with the best on the planet, which seems crazy because he's a Southampton player, but it's just the truth. And yeah, I really like that pick. And his technique is fantastic. He's like David Beckham levels of free kick. So yeah, nice pick. I like that. As for mine, I've gone a little bit more based on kind of goal scoring form and the circumstances surrounding it. So I've gone with Kingsley Coman, actually. The Bayern winger who before the Atletico game last night, he scored in each of his last 3 appearances. One of them was a really good finish at the near post against Stuttgart, and then there was a header against Werder Bremen as well. And I think basically he's not known for his mega prolific goal scoring, Kingsley Coman, but I think when you consider that the wingers are absolutely scrapping to get into that Bayern team, because they've got Kingsley Coman, Leroy Sané, Serge Gnabry, and Douglas Costa, all absolutely fantastic. All those goals on an individual level are absolutely huge for Coman. So to even be stating your case to get in that team is a massive undertaking. And yeah, his goals are just showing that he's in great form at the moment for Bayern.
Yeah, absolutely. The wing depth they have at that team is legitimately so scary, and it seems like it's such a Bayern. What's the word I'm looking for? It's such a it's something we've become so used to with Bayern. If you look at the wingers that they've had in the past, the Robins, Ribery's,
Yeah.
now they've got Gnabry, Sane, Kingsley Coman, who we were talking a couple weeks ago when they absolutely smashed somebody in the Bundesliga. I can't remember who it was, and it was their third and fourth wingers playing, and yet they absolutely ripped it up. Sane and Gnabry were both out. The depth they have at wing there is just so scary.
Yeah, they've always had iconic wingers. I think Robben and Ribery is one of the most iconic partnerships. You call it a partnership, but they play on completely opposite sides of the pitch. But Robben and Ribery, absolutely iconic, and they've clearly gone all out to replace them, just as they've trotted off to go and do other things. But yeah, Coman deserved a little special mention there for me.
Yeah. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up right there. Before we do get out of here, as I always do, I want to encourage everybody to hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell to be notified when we drop a new video. And like we mentioned at the beginning, if you haven't watched it yet, we do have that Europe's Best Under 21 11 video out now. So go check that out because, like I said, it's going to be timeless for a little while. But yeah. I'm looking forward to. I'm actually starting to look forward to the Champions League group stage ending because the games are just coming so thick and fast that it feels like we're doing these rankings with games about to kick off in 30 minutes, and I'm gonna feel like an idiot hyping a team up that gets smashed in an hour's time. So
no, we've got to back ourselves. We've got to back our judgment. That's what we got to do.
Yeah. All right. Also, one last thing I want to mention. If you or somebody you know would prefer the audio version of this show, you can search us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just search the Rank and Report Football Show. Will be the first thing to pop up. Give us a subscription. Give us a follow. Give us a rating, a review. Tell your mom, tell your dad, whoever it may be. Pass the show on. That's the best way to get the show around to other people if you like what we do. But yeah, I think that's it for today. Charlie, any last words for the people?
No, just had a lot of fun. Wonderful way to spend an evening. Hope that everyone's enjoyed listening to us. And I will see them all and you next time.
See ya.